Alright guys, today we're going to be checking out SCP When Day Breaks. SCP-001 is done by SCP Illustrated, and you guys all know that this is something that I have been looking very forward to continuing. I know I am a massive fan of SCP Illustrated. I know he's separating himself from SCP a little bit, and hey, more power to him. More like spread your wings, bud. Spread your wings. I really, really enjoy this. Apparently the original 001 author was a person named Shaggy Dreadlocks, and it was written by Dr. Zimmerman and SCP Illustrated. So we're going to jump into this. There was an ad for the playing cards. They will be in the description down below. I do not know if they're still available, but definitely go support, okay? Now, let's just go. I already know I already know. I already know. Guys, this has been a good story so far, and I can't wait to see where they go from here. The last episode was on the old man. It showed a side of the old man, like no relation, that I haven't seen before, and I was actually glad to see it. Here we go.
The warmth of the sheets and the cool morning air was the first thing Dr. Bright noticed. The taste of cigarettes and regret came shortly afterwards. The stabbing pain of his hangover followed. He winced at a ray of sunlight shining on the bed beside him and realized he wasn't in his own bed.
Lovely.
A woman wearing his shirt and a pair of socks was standing at the window, staring out at the sunrise. Bright considered a lot of things in that moment. He turned away from the woman and grabbed his necklace and phone off the nightstand. The woman, startled by his fumbling in the dim morning light, put a hand on the window, but didn't move away from it. Bright took real stock of his surroundings. A row of stuffed animals occupied a space on the floor to his left, beside the window. The paint on the walls and many pieces of furniture were various shades of pink, and little red hearts covered the blankets.
You know what?
He offered with a chuckle.
You can keep the shirt. I've got to go.
With that, the woman turned to face him, her face covered in boils and melting skin.
Whoa. Talk about going to bed with a 10 and waking up with a 2.
Really?
He said, as the woman lurched towards him and out of the light. Dr. Sumerian was about to fall asleep when the power at Site-88 died. His eyes shot open. The unnoticed air circulation system and the hum of lights outside his room quieted. The buzz of the emergency lighting system came to life shortly afterwards. The vents murmured as air began to flow again, though slower and quieter than normal. It had been 3 years down here, and 3 years of trouble. Power outages were new though, and troubling in a brand new way. Without power, they couldn't stay down here. Without power, they were probably all dead. Maybe sooner rather than later, as they lived directly under a nuclear power plant.
That usually is a bad sign.
He reached for the landline next to his bed, but there was no tone. He cursed and stumbled to his feet. The room was large enough for a bed, a side table, and a small carved wooden cabinet. A rushing march of feet sped by his room and faded into the background. The emergency intercom croaked to life and delivered its message.
All staff report to your designated evacuation zones. Repeat. All staff report to your designated evacuation zones.
The automated message continued. Sumerian cast about in the dim light of his clothes and then his shoes. He gave up on finding his tie, but pulled on his boots. He opened the door and went down the hallway. He looked up at the stairwell, glanced at the inoperative elevator, and then made his way upwards. Sumerian made it to the top of the stairwell in record time. He went to the lockers next to the airlock and pulled out his equipment. He pulled on his MTF uniform and triple-checked his flamethrower. He ran one hand over the MTF's logo printed on the body, an image of Elmo with a halo against a background of flame.
There's actually an MTF called Elmo's Fire with the Elmo. Yay!
When the end of the world came and went, Sumerian found himself redundant. There's something to be said for redundancy in the apocalypse, but not his kind. An ethics guy with a doctorate in English literature wasn't redundant. It was annoying. It had taken almost a year for him to retrain himself to be useful at the end of the world. but here he was. He'd always rated well at the staff gun range, but was nothing special when compared to the agents or MTF members. A flamethrower, though, was a lot easier to aim, so he and the 3 other useless doctors had something to do at least. And if they died, well, no big loss. The team commander, however, was a veteran, a Navy SEAL commander recruited in the late 90s and notorious for his skill and valor in the SCP-457 breach of 2009. Agent Thompson walked into the room with a cigar in his mouth. He began to bark orders.
Triple check your equipment. Make sure nothing is exposed. Any of you lot turned into drippy flesh monsters on my watch, and I'll put you down myself.
Good,
The
man.
MTF commander walked into the middle of the room and sat down on one of the benches.
Listen up. We have a power interruption. There was no communication before it happened. No one knows what we're going to find up there. If we open the door and the flesh pours in, you breathe fire until we get the door closed. It's a waxing crescent and it's nighttime, which means we're at a lower risk of exposure, but do not get complacent. It just takes a single bit of moonlight to turn you into one of them.
The MTF commander put his cigar out on the bench.
Our goal is the control room. We establish contact with the staff there and find out what happened to the power. If they're dead or gone, we figure out how to turn the power back on ourselves. Lieutenant,
Cimmerian perked up.
Yes, sir?
you take point. Take Kaplan and Liara with you. I'll be right behind you with Travis.
Yes, sir.
Scramble gear on, everyone. Watch your footing. No chit-chat, and let's make it a night to remember. Everyone ready?
Once the equipment was triple checked, the other team members nodded in agreement. The commander barked again.
Good. Travis, unseal the airlock. Close it behind you on the way out and cover our 6. Alright, Omega 5. Show me what you've got.
I wonder for a minute if it's going to address what's going to happen in the far future with this. But we'll see when we get there. Here we go.
As Cimmerian emerged from the inside of Site-88's underground facilities, he was struck most by how quiet the world above was. No birds, no insects, no animals at all. Then he looked up at the giant cooling towers in front of him. He paused for just a moment too long as Kaplan and Liara banged into his back. He moved forward, letting his eyes drop from the cooling towers. They moved to the power plant's offices and control rooms. Then he flipped a switch on the scramble gear for night vision. The scramble gear was useless leftover tech from the SCP-096 project.
Huh.
It was questionable, honestly, how so many of them had ended up at Site-88, as it never once hosted SCP-096. For once, the wheels of bureaucracy were useful, though. If Cimmerian had to guess, at some point it must have been a consideration to move the object here. Then either no one followed up on it, or the world ended before they could. Still, an eyepiece with near instant digital reproduction of real-world light was a useful tool now.
Yeah, using 9-6 being the shy guy, I'm wondering how they were going to transport him, to be honest with you, but still.
What it allowed was the ability to execute surface missions, as long as the goggles get recharged. Without power, though, even that was impossible. Cimmerian moved forward into the silence of night, and the team followed him. They made it another 40 feet before he raised a hand to pause. He could hear a faint, gurgling noise to his right.
That's bad.
But as the team held in place, it got no louder, and it got no closer. He imagined it was perhaps running water from the cooling pond. Maybe. He motioned for them to advance, but more slowly. As they reached the first door, he directed Kaplan to open it. He nodded and moved forward. He took the right-hand side, and Cimmerian took the left. Liara followed after them both to cover the center. In one swift motion, they all quickly entered. Cimmerian moved rifle raised into the far right corner of the room and confirmed an all clear with his colleagues. Not one piece of furniture was where Cimmerian expected it to be, and a single man lay against the wall, a tiny bullet hole in the right side of his head, and a standard issue Glock sat in his hand. The commander gestured to the corridor leading out of the room. The rest of the facility was much the same. Empty rooms, tossed furniture, the occasional suicide. and then they came to the control room. The chamber itself was actually quite large. Various pieces of mechanical and electronic equipment lined the walls. The centre of the room showed signs of a struggle though. 4 men lay on the floor with bullet holes in their heads, and pistols at their sides as well.
What the fuck happened here?
Cimmerian said, looking around. The rest of the team stood in silence for several seconds before Thompson spoke up.
Looks like the flesh rolled through here. These guys hit the emergency shutdown, then they shot themselves before they could get taken.
Cimmerian shook his head.
But then, why didn't the flesh drag them out into the sun anyway?
Right.
That's not our concern. Liara and Kaplan, get those battery backups going and find out what it'll take to get things running again. Sim and Travis, cover the exits. I'll check the stiffs.
Everyone moved into position. Shortly afterward, the room buzzed as computers came back online. The battery backups also caused the lights to sputter back to life for a moment. Then they began to flicker. Cimmerian stopped and started to concentrate on his breathing. The flamethrower in front of him was only slightly comforting, given the situation. He knew it was standard operating procedure to kill yourself if you thought you might get taken. But they almost always grabbed the bodies anyway and let them melt in the sun.
Yeah, they have done that every single time since before. What's stopping them now? Even death didn't stop them. And they would always bring them back.
No one knew for sure if scrambling their brains helped. It was a small comfort everyone who went or worked topside believed in. Perhaps it was a comforting lie. But it worked. Cimmerian reached down and felt for the pistol at his own hip, and a bit of calm washed over him. In the darkness, an eyeball crawled out of a ventilation shaft
Lovely.
and plopped onto the ground. The ocular
Yay, I was wondering when it was going to turn into this. Here we go.
nerve trailed behind it and continued back into the vent. It wriggled and pushed itself ahead. The creature it belonged to was looking around the facility too, for anyone alive, anyone not already taken by the sun. It was startled slightly when the MTF team breached the facility. Then it felt a sense of relief. It was right. This really was where Site-88 was located. Deep in the bowels of the facility, a massive wave of flesh began to move of its own accord. The flesh rolled end over end out of the cooling pond. Then it went to meet back up with the parts of itself that were patrolling the facility. It was time to finish this. Cimmerian saw it first. A dozen tendrils of flesh crawled on the floor and towards them from the hallway ahead. He let out a blast of fire in the flickering darkness, and the telltale screech of the flesh answered him. Travis and Cimmerian closed the door and stood with their backs against it. A dull thud, followed by a smacking sound, came from the other side. Then the flesh began to leak into the room, first under the door, and then from every crack and crevice. Cimmerian made a dash for the second exit, but the commander grabbed him by the arm.
There's no point in that, Lieutenant. These fuckers are pack hunters. If there's one already here, then you can bet your ass there are 2 more out there. We stand our ground. All of you prepare to engage.
The men and women of the MTF moved to a defensive posture at the center of the room. Then they turned their flamethrowers outward.
That door is about to come down. As soon as it does, light these fuckers up.
Cimmerian felt for the pistol at his side again. He could feel his heart beating out of his chest as the adrenaline flooded his veins. Another groaning whine came from the door as the hinges began to buckle.
Continuous fire until we are clear.
The commander gave a small laugh and delivered a final statement.
May St. Elmo protect us.
Well, for St. Elmo! For St. Elmo! The word letter of the day is F for fire!
With a crash, the door broke apart. The flesh poured into the room and tentacles reached out for them. The room was quickly filled with fire and flesh. Agent Thompson was the first to go for his pistol as the end came. A long life of training let him unholster it quickly and fire one shot into his temple. He dropped to the ground just as the monster reached him. The doctors all fumbled with their holsters in the precious second left to them. Cimmerian actually managed to get his pistol out. The tentacles grabbed his arm, and the shot went off harmlessly into the ground. The rest never had a chance. The flesh swarmed them. Cimmerian was grasped by both arms and both legs before being raised into the air. Then something vile rolled into the room. It vaguely and somewhat poorly imitated a human in size and shape, but the proportions were all wrong. The head too bulbous, the arms too thin and spindly.
That is disgusting.
It moved on wobbly legs inexorably forward. Then it stopped in front of Cimmerian's face.
Fucking finally,
It said, in a single voice.
it's me.
Cimmerian's eyes went wide.
Look.
The creature produced a familiar ruby and silver amulet from a fold in its skin.
Holy shit. Bright?
Cimmerian asked.
The one and only. If I let you go, will you promise not to kill yourself?
Cimmerian nodded, and the creature let him drop to the floor. He landed on his feet but dropped to one knee immediately from the impact. He gave a mournful glance towards his former commander before looking up at the monstrosity standing over him.
What are you?
Ha!
The creature gave the approximation of a shrug.
I'm not sure, but I need your help.
Cimmerian looked at the other dumbfounded members of the MTF, silently trapped in tendrils of flesh and sinew.
Help with what, Bright?
What do you know about Yellowstone?
Yeah, that's what I've been
The
wondering.
reset button?
Aye, that's the one.
I know only a human hand can activate it, and it's almost 2,000 flesh-infested miles away.
Sounds like a road trip sim.
Bright, what the hell are you talking about?
I'm talking about saving the world. You guys in? Or are you out?
I was asking about this just the other day. What would happen? I was asking about this the other day. I was wondering about this the other day. And every single time for the last little bit that I've been watching When Day Breaks, when are they going to bring up 2000? When is the Yellowstone going to be brought up? Because even though they can't do anything but the sun right now, but when the sun stops doing what it's doing, they can repopulate. But the biggest concern for me is, really the biggest concern at this point with 2000 is how do they keep the flesh out of there? How do they keep the sun out of there? And would it really do any kind of good? Guys, I don't know what happened with the person that who's Bright's character in this, but yeah, at some point I need to just sit down and really pay attention to what people are telling me. But in any case, this is another fantastic addition to this entire series, and I can't wait for more. I'm going to be doing more and more of this series as the days go by. I was trying to finish the Gavin Bob series and this one at the same time because I accidentally got caught up checking out two series at the same time, and that's never a good thing because you're having to ignore one to do the other one. And considering Gavin Bob only had 4 parts and this one has 19, well, one of them was going to have to wait for a bit, and it was When Day Breaks on that one. All that being said and done, guys, I cannot wait to release my first SCP video. I can't. I got all my voice lines in for it. I've just got to find time to edit it, and then I will start on that. Past that, guys, once again, go by, check out what SCP Illustrated is doing nowadays. Check out the new videos he's putting out because he's doing stuff more that he wants to do right now. And I can't really wait to see what he comes up with next. Until then, I'll catch you guys next time. Be sure to leave a like and a comment. And check out the description down below for all of SCP Illustrated's links as well as my own. Until then, guys, avoid the sun at all costs. FPF 5000.